Hey everybody, it's me, Lindsay19. It's been a while, hasn't it? 3 months, as a matter of fact. 3 months since I've done an update on my podcast, and I'm sure you all thought I just gave up on it. But no, I really haven't. I haven't given up on it. I haven't. Here's me right now not giving up on it. So there you go, for whatever it's worth. It's been 3 months. So I recently came up on 6 months of going to the club and networking and building myself up, trying to find a dominant, still, like doing that whole thing, um, as one does. But yeah, and so I came up on that 6 months this last weekend, and I had a little emotional breakdown about it, as a matter of fact, because I had a moment where I felt that, I was like, half a year. I've been doing this for half of a year, and I don't feel like I'm any closer to like finding what I'm looking for. Which was an extreme reaction that I had, but that's what happened. And there was an event that kind of like started it into motion. Like I kind of like it, you know what? I spiraled. Let's just say I spiraled. And they upped my estrogen a few weeks ago. So there's plenty of factors at play. But I had a big old emotional fit about it, and it reminded me of one that I had about a month and a half ago as well. And so I guess what I want to do is try to convey where I've been in the last 3 months and what my thoughts are overall for the 6 months that I've been actively going out, engaging with the BDSM community, navigating my way around it, and just, I don't know, just bookmark it there for now, and or checkpoint or whatever. I guess where to start. So the last time, oh look, I'm wearing a pendant. The last time we left off, I had somewhat of a really, really shitty dominant guy that just basically just took me for a ride and took advantage of me. But whatever. Um, and I have his chain, and I keep my pendant on it. Um, I have like a couple of souvenirs that ended up being meaningful from, I guess you could say, the three DOMs that have really fucked with me before. And fucked with me, but also, like I was pretty fucking intense with them at times. Whether it was in rules and protocol or during play, I had a pretty intense relationship with three people so far. The first one being my trans man dom. That was my first one, and then abusive chasery dom, and then a dom that I recently broke it off with, and that was a recent thing. But let's see. So where to start? So yeah, I tried doing pickup play for a little bit. Casual pickup play. No online building. No, basically nothing until I had stepped foot into a room at a club and done a scene with somebody. Like, I mean, of course, like I would talk to them at the club and shit if they were up there, but it was like I wouldn't fuck with them unless they were there, and I'd be like, okay, well, if they did get to me online, I'd be like, yeah, you can meet me there or something. Like, we'll talk there, Well, I'd offer like, hey, we can get coffee or something too, but nobody ever wants to fucking get coffee. Like, I don't know, it just does not seem like a big deal to me. It's just like, yeah, I mean, everybody generally likes coffee. Like, it's addictive as fuck. Most people drink it in some form or another. But it's just like, it's quick, it's cheap, it's casual. I prefer to meet outside the club once. That's nice. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people do it with me. Some people like get dinner and shit before, but I don't know. But yeah, I was doing more casual play, and I had a casual play partner that I was doing a little bit with. I had actually opened up a few of my boundaries to him, and that's about the time he either lost interest, or it wasn't necessarily the lost interest. It was like we had a major incompatibility that I felt, and I'm pretty sure he felt too, couldn't be reconciled. And and I think deep down, like, it was disappointing, and like I totally understand that. So we kind of fizzled out, and we stopped doing stuff. But I became pretty open to whoever was, because by this point in me being a regular in the community and stuff, I was having people reaching out to me, which was great. But again, I wouldn't build with anybody until I was present, and when I was present, I was constantly busy and engaged and pulled in different directions, and time runs by fast there. And so it was this constant thing of every time I would go up there was like people who wanted to negotiate, who wanted to talk and get to know me better. Um, and for whatever reason, I would get swept up in something that night. Something would just like pop up, and I would be in an emotional state, and I was getting in emotional states because it was like this thing of having these this many people wanting to find out if we are a match or if we can play. And so another thing that I encountered was the large, and it's some of them are just more like swingers who kind of just use kink because it's like a kink club, and like but you can also fuck. So yeah, let me hit you and then we'll fuck. There's a lot of people like that, and I learned to kind of weed those people out and figure out who they are, because that's not what I'm interested in. I'm not trying to fuck anybody up there, and like figuring out how to navigate the swingers from the players, and the sexual and the non-sexual players, the players who all they sex is part of a scene for them. You know, I really can't do much with them, and so learning what I was really after was a big part in learning to navigate who to give my time to, because this a lot of this forced me into this position again and again of what do I really want? What am I here for? Because I was constantly finding myself unfulfilled from casual play. I was either sub crashing after the fact because the person just wouldn't contact me, or just kind of would just, obviously didn't give a fuck about me. And a couple people that wanted to fuck me, and I'd be like, well, let's do some play. And so the gateway to fucking me is get, get in regularity with me, build trust, build rapport, and then build into some dom sub shit, and then what I learned to eventually say is discipline me and then you can fuck me. But it took me a while to be able to sum it up that well. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, so I was just having to. I was doing things up there, and they weren't getting what they wanted because they wanted to fuck, and I wasn't getting what I wanted because all they knew how to do was impact play. And so in a lot of cases, they weren't even going to do any bondage. Like, I mean, they only had, like a pillory, a St. Andrew's cross, like a couple of pieces of equipment, it's like a spanking bench. Nobody would ever, like, hardly use the things, or they would just do my hands to the cross. And I'm like, yeah, I got fucking ankle cuffs on. Like, and so I learned more, and like, I'm fine with impact, but you can't hit me if I'm not tied up. And if I'm not tied up, then I need to be under some mental bondage. Like, you need to be like telling me shit and like fucking, you know what I mean, dumbing on me verbally or something. Because like I'm not a masochist, and that's another thing I learned about myself is like, doing some of the impact stuff. I was, I'm not there for the pain. Like the marks are wonderful. I love the marks, but I'm not there for that, for the pain. And I eventually learned to kind of gather that I'm more there to endure pain for other people's approval, and to like, I love to please a sadist. Like, you know, giving a sadist their jollies makes me happy, but the pain doesn't. And so without the right subspace, the pain just aggravates me after a certain point, where then I started to realize, like during these pickup play scenes, I was like, all they're doing is hitting me now. And in some cases, like I had to like tell them like, you're gonna have to tie me up or do something, and then they don't know what to do. And then I'm like, okay, well, I can step by step it for you. Like, here's, I got all the stuff. Like, and that's fine, whatever. But it's just, I was just, casual play was just sucking. And, like, you get people, like, rubbing their hands all over me. And it was just, most cases, it was fine. I consented to it. But, like, it just seems like most of the time that was the real motivator, was get naked and feel me up, which I'm down for too. But so it wasn't working, and I was becoming frustrated. Somebody eventually approached me, wanting to date me, and um, it was kind of weird because they even used the crush language. They said they had a crush on me, and it put me in this weird position because, like, it's a she. I was like, cool with it, like, but I barely met her. I'd only talked to her once. Like, she had followed me online and, like, seen some of my stuff and everything, but, like, and I'd seen some of her stuff, but there really wasn't much there except for a little bit of flirting online after that. And but eventually she told me that, like, she had a crush and, like, wanted to shoot her shot and all this, and I was like put in a position where I was like felt, um I don't know. It really had never happened to me, I guess. I guess that was one of the first times somebody had ever in my life approached me and told me they had a crush on me. Like, it had happened before, but never so direct. And it put me in a position where I felt I had to respond. And of course, I was like, sure, okay, yeah, let's go down this path. Let's go on a couple dates, see what happens. Um, and they were like, cool. And then it immediately jumped into, like, online building and online interactions, which I was like, I mean, that's okay, but that's fine. I mean, I'll be up there in a week or something, like, and, we'll get some face-to-face time then. But again, I was put in that position where I was talking to somebody, getting to know somebody, and then meeting them in person. And it's just weird. It's tricky for me. It's like, again, reading a book and then seeing the movie. If you read the book first and then you see the movie, you're always going to be disappointed, generally, unless the movie's like, The Shining or some shit. Um, but I kind of tried to steer away from that building and the meeting people, but here I was doing it. So that happened. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't work out. But what the situation ended up being was that she wanted, like, a girlfriend, like, specifically a sapphic romance thing. And I was like, sure, okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Like, I'm pretty sapphic. Like, I've always been into women and shit. But I was into it. I was fine. Like, it was cool. She was, so, I mean, there was a lot of good in there too. Like, she was very much like the dude in the relationship. Like, she would, like, put her arm out for me when we were in public for me to take, and, like, would open doors for me, like, lead me around and stuff. And, like, I really appreciated that. That was some of the only first time that had ever happened. And I was just blown away by how it made me feel. And, like, because my whole life I had been treating women that way. And now it was my turn now. And so that was special. And there was a lot of special things, with her. And the major, well, so, I mean, it ended up being more of a vanilla thing. We broke up because it was just a time thing. Like, she couldn't really make a lot of time for me when I was around, and I get it. She's busy, and it was just one of those things where I was like, well, it's not going to be enough for me. Like, it just won't. Like, I already know it's already not. Like, I spent a lot of that time in that short relationship being upset, of the few times I did see her and how short our visits were frequently cut. It just wasn't enough time for me, so I knew it wasn't going to work out. And yeah, but, like, it was more of a vanilla thing, and that was okay. Like, she was more, it was like top bottom energy. Like, I was the bottom, which is where I need to be. But I was nervous about bringing it up because we had already been doing a thing for a little bit, but she, I assumed she kind of knew that I'm submissive and that I needed, I'm looking for a dom and stuff. And so eventually I brought it up. I was like, is there a path in our relationship for that? Like, to be dom sub? And she was like, yes, but she was a submissive, and she had a dom, and which, like, is fine. Like, I get it. Like, I'm kind of that way too. Like, I wouldn't mind having a sub, but I would also like to have a dom. I would say dom comes first, and I got that about her. Her dom came first. I was just like her girlfriend slash bottomy subby girlfriend, or whatever. um, but dom came first, and I understood that about that relationship and how important it was to her, because that's what I wanted. So I never tried to interfere or come between their interactions or anything. I wanted to make sure that you know um, that was left sacred and unpolluted by my presence in the polyamorous relationships that we all had. But she said yes, that that she was interested in being my dom, that we would eventually have to work there, that the DS was something like, you just, in her words, like, you just can't rush it, or whatever. So I was put in a position where um, I could have the vanilla and some of the sexual stuff and the romantic and emotional stuff, but I couldn't have the DS stuff. I had to just wait, and there wasn't enough time. So it was like, I was just like, it's not gonna work. It just won't work, because my needs still weren't being met, and I was still in a position where I'm like, well, I'm gonna continue to look for dominant because um, you're a sub, but I like you, and I like our energy and stuff. But I was willing to try, but it didn't work out. And after that, oh God, what did I do after that? After that, my brother died. That's what happens. And for 3 weeks, I dropped off the face of the planet. That's a skateboard back there, the Sailor Moon skateboard. Yeah, for some people have asked about it and stuff. It's dope, isn't it? Yeah, it was one of his favorite things. He was a big skateboarder. But I had an older brother. He was 2 years older than me, and he died recently of an overdose. And it was devastating, obviously. But I didn't. For a whole month, I kind of just dropped out of the scene. Didn't talk to many people. I wasn't camming. Like, I had just gone full time camming too. That was another thing, is I quit my vanilla job to go full time camming about 3 or 4 weeks or a month before my brother died, and it was good. It's been good. It's but talk about one thing after the other. I went full time, got in this relationship, broke up with that, and was pretty. I was, and she took the breakup kind of bad, and that was hard on me. That I really felt like fucking shit about it. I felt like such a villain, and I, and like, I had hurt a lot in that relationship, way more than she did. And yet I was like painted as the villain at the end, like I dumped her and shit. That was, her language was like, dumped her. It's like, I thought we made an adult decision together, but yeah. And then so that happened, and I felt pretty bad and then a week later, my brother died. Right before he died, I was gonna go back to the club, and I was thinking about who did I want to play with, because like for the longest time it had been this thing of people approaching me and me just kind of meeting them and being like, okay, 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 what did you have in mind? Okay. But then, like, having been more established, it occurred to me to think, like, who do I like? And so I went through my friends list. I was like, I wasn't even sure. And so I went through my friends list and started just scrolling and looking. And I landed on two people. And there's a guy, a cis man, I know, right? And who's not really kinky, but is really cool, and I really, really like him. Like, he's got genuinely, like, I like his energy, and he's fun and bubbly like me. He kind of matches like my puppy dog energy, but he is completely adorable. He's so handsome too. But yeah, so I really liked him, and I was like, well, he's not really gonna like tie me up or dom me, but like, maybe we could have a little cuddle session or something, because we had done a little cuddling before and stuff, and it was great. Um, so I was like, there's this guy. I don't look at this guy. And then there was a trans woman who had reached out to me a while back, like back in like February, and wanted to go to the club together and stuff. And I kind of told her, I was like, we can go on the same night, but I don't want to like go together because like I'm all over the place. I may get tied up in a room and then 2 hours later, not sure where I am and shit. Like, I might be in a cage somewhere. You just don't know. You never know. And but she started going up there, and we would see each other a bunch. She reached out to me a couple times to do a scene. I was like, yes, I'm interested. Let's negotiate it when I'm up there. And then I just kept never getting a chance to negotiate with her. I would get caught up in something, or something, just something. But every time I would see her, like getting ready and getting ready to go at the end of the night, each time I was like more and more attracted to her. It was something that grew, and I think part of it was the fact that she didn't seem bothered that I wasn't able to make time for her. And it was, to me, I read it as a self-respect thing, that like she was like, well, if you're not gonna if you're not gonna put forth the effort, then like she called, I feel like she called me doll one night, or she said like, see you later, doll, or something like that. I just remember being like, it's like, she don't even care. There was something about her not like being pushy, that was attractive to me. And she was dumb, and she's trans. So I was like, perfect. Let's try it out. Let's do a scene. You know. Um, so I was on my couch, and I actually sent her a message. It was like, hey, what's up? I was just thinking, like, hey, let's catch up sometime. When I'm down, like for real this time. Um, and then I found out like 10 minutes later, my brother was dead on the couch, because like I even sent her a picture of me, like a little selfie, because I was over, like I already knew something was wrong, like I already knew something's wrong with my brother. But we'd had scares like this before, where like nobody knew where he was and he needed to be checked on or something. And like, I mean, he overdosed before, um, but like, yeah, I was kind of waiting to hear, and like I remember thinking, and this was not the first time I thought this. When I got the call, was that either this is going to be just another scare, or it'll be the last scare. And that was not my first time ever thinking that. But this ended up being the last scare. Um, but yeah, he was dead. And it was really hard. And it's still really hard. I kept it under wraps for a while. I wanted to keep all the worlds separate, because on the one hand, I had the world, the fetish world, and the kink world, and the world where I truly exist in my mind. There's that world. A lot of them didn't even know I had a brother, much less that he was dead now. Then I had the old world, the world here, where like everybody I know is, and like, I transitioned 2 years ago. A lot of them have never seen me. A lot of them, didn't know. Like, I'm not on Facebook and shit. Like, so a lot of them, when he died, a lot of, we knew a lot of people. And like, everybody was asking, where's his brother? And so it became this thing of like, people are going to start talking, rumors are going to start getting around. So I was like, I had to out myself to everybody. And I just did it with a picture, and like, you did it on my terms, and it's just like, look, memorial is gonna be 2 weeks from now. Fucking be there, like, yes, this is me. um Come on, let's do this. Gotta bury my brother. um and they all knew, but at the same time, none of them knew me. Like, they all knew the boy I used to be in shed, or the boy I used to pretend to be, or whatever. Girl trapped in a boy's body, whatever. That's a whole nother discussion. But they didn't know me, and it was weird receiving all the condolences and sympathy from them as well. Especially, I hadn't seen a lot of them in 10, 12 years. um and like, it was strange, and like, I didn't have a single person who would just fucking put their arms around me and like, just like hold me tight and just give me the space to cry, because like, I was really trying to keep it together for everybody and for the family and shit. Like this fucking devastated, my parents and all that shit. Like neither of them ever thought they were gonna lose a kid. And so I didn't have anybody, and I wasn't going back to where all the kink stuff was, so nobody there knew. And then with the camming, I just dropped off. I couldn't go cam. I was like, I just can't. I fucking cannot do it right now. I just no negotiation. I'm just not going to, So I just didn't work for like 3 weeks. Um, yeah, and I had some rough fucking days. I had some days where I could not get out of this chair, and I just played Apex Legends compulsively over and over. And any time between matches, like as soon as I got out of a match, I would immediately start another match because I would start crying if I didn't get back into another match. And that was probably the hardest day. But in a lot of ways, I think I needed that day. Like, and they found me eventually. Like, I did have some family members realize what I had been doing the entire day. And they came and got me. Helped me snap out of it. But it was my mom actually who convinced me to send out a mass message to all my cam people, letting them know what happened. She was like, you need to be professional. You need to let them know you didn't just disappear, that you didn't just flake on them, that you're still there. And like, it's like when your mom tells you that you need to, be upfront with your clients, then you should listen to her. So, yeah. So I did that, and that felt better. And actually, when I did eventually come back to camming, it was actually really good because, like, in a lot of ways, this is what I joked about later. In a lot of ways, it was like coming back to work when you work with 160 boyfriends. Like, my good people and my good clients are incredibly good to me, and they're so sweet. And they were coming in and they were checking on me, and they were asking me what I wanted to do, and they were taking me, and doing shows with me and giving me orgasms. And like, it was like 2 days, the first 2 days back, like I was doing show after show, and everybody was being like so nice to me. And like, some people, not everybody even did shows, some people just popped in to check on me. And so that was actually very unexpected. I didn't expect that to be what that was, and that was good for me. And even just talking about it with people, because you do this cam thing, and a lot of times these clients are like your coworkers. They're like the people you spend a lot of your time with, talking with and stuff, and so you build relationships with them. And just talking to some of them, and even just verbalizing the fact helped. The fact that I was a person who had a sibling my entire life, and now I'm not. um, it's a significant thing. It's a transition. You know what I mean? It's an identity shift away from something that you were or thought you were into something that you are now. And I think having the space to talk about that was good. Um, yeah, and then I did open up to the community about the same time. It was about I think it was about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks after it happened is when I opened up the worlds to everybody and let everybody know what I was going through. Partly for the kink community too. I didn't want to go back up there with this as a secret and end up breaking down during a scene or something, or having an aftercare disaster crash because I'm in an emotional state and I feel like I can't mention it to anybody. So I felt it was only fair to any tops that were going to play with me that everybody needed to be aware of my emotional state. And it ended up being very good. Again, everybody was very, very supportive, and I think it was a good way for me to allow all that support in at my own pace too, because I that was another reason I kind of kept it under wraps, as I felt that if I opened it up too quickly, um, I would be just swamped with people. I was already swamped with people back here, and then like I was like, if I open it to them, I'm gonna get a blast of too much at once, and then I'll just be dropped out. So this was a way to like, reignite the support system weeks later when I was finding as time was passing that things were simultaneously getting easier and harder, and there were other things that I had to do, like struggle with Apple and activation locks. That was a true, an utter nightmare, and still is. I've still got a little bit more to work on that. Um, God, I hate Apple. God damn it, derailed my shit right there. Um, but so that happens. That was that. When I started to feel better and ready to re-engage and go back to the club and do stuff again, I had felt very cleansed by some of the support I did have, because one of my somebody who's kind of become like my best friend is in that community, and having her support was pretty big when I finally did open it up to everybody. And I was in a much better place when I finally went back. Um, but I went back and I decided to do a scene with that trans girl top, and she was not expecting it when I sat down and was like talking about like this is, and like, hey, do you want to do a scene tonight, like here's what I would be open to, just negotiate it out real quick, just kind of a narrow little scene. And she was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. um and and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it in hindsight, but I think it's fair to say sparks flew. That first scene was very good. There was a couple of things that were complicated about it. I had somebody kind of larking on me in the club, and made me pretty uncomfortable just by how much staring he was doing. But he kind of was like watching our scene in the doorway, and like he was jerking off and shit. And like, it was super uncomfortable. And I later got a message that had come an hour after I got to the club. I didn't see it till I left, but it was something like, "Hey, I'll be the tall guy. Can't wait to meet you." And I was like, "Oh my fucking god, are you kidding me?" And I did, and I fucking just, my stupid paranoid brain just assumed it was somebody watches me on cam, and I was like, "Are you fucking here for a free show right now?" Like everything in me wanted to point at him and be like, "No, you pay, like you tip, motherfucker," because it was just this idea, because I get a lot of people who watch me and never tip me. And I deal with that in my own ways, my own emotional grief when it comes to those people who come in day after day after day and never show me any love. But I was like, motherfucker, if you are one of those people who comes in day after day after day and never shows me love, and you came up here to watch me do a scene, and it was a kind of an intimate scene, like, and it was a first scene too, and I was like, fuck, and but we had a little protocol. I had told her that if I was nervous, I'd ask to be blindfolded, and that would be like a signal to both. Put a hood on a horse's head, calm him down. I was like, first you can calm me down with blindfold to keep me in subspace or whatever during a scene, but then that's your cue to know that something's made me uncomfortable, and if you don't know what it is, then you need to ask me. But she blindfolded me. She made him leave. The scene was good. We did another scene the next night. It was even better. The shit was so fucking good that I was in a place where I was ready to dive in, and I did. Now I didn't dive in like I did with the first one, trans man one. I didn't do it that hard. Nobody collared me in a week this time. Um, But and I was very paced, like as far as like, because their pacing was fast, lightning fast. And if I had not had my pacing and my boundaries in place, we would have fucking gone to 1,000% on the second date. Like, but I felt it was really good, and I felt this person had a similar level of experience to me, was willing to learn like me, trans like me, same age, similar, like I was felt really good, and I felt that we were a good couple. I felt we looked good together. Like, I love the way she looked. Like, and I mean, maybe that's shallow of me to say, but she had a really cool, like, kind of dom style, and I was like into that, and like, um, and there was a lot of good energy there. Like, I mean, there was some pretty energetic kissing and stuff. Like, and after that second scene, um, I think it was after the second one. Maybe it was the first one. I don't know. I kissed her, and she wasn't expecting it, but it was my way of saying like, I really, really enjoyed that. That was way better than I expected. I want to continue this. I was trying to make it as clear as I could that I was like, this was more than just a little pickup play. Like, okay, I had fun. Like, this, and that's what I had been telling people over and over was no building, no building, no online building. We play, and if there's energy, we build. And that's exactly what happened. Is we played twice, and there was energy twice, and so I wanted to build, and they did too. So here we were building. Um, and we built hard for 2 weeks, and not hard, like we didn't have a lot of crazy shit. Like we had a good spreadsheet of consent of different things that I was okay with in private setting and club setting. I had red and green, and then I would just flick the red to green or the green to red like switchboard, and that way it was a shared spreadsheet. We both look at it, and if she was gonna do a scene, she'd be like, okay, I can whip Lindsay's fucking feet, but I can't, face fuck her, yet, because it's still red. But the whole idea of this thing is like, we want to get this whole motherfucker green. Um, and like I had pretty much everything I could think of on there that I'd be interested in and that she would be interested in. And then we had punishments. We had, all the good shit on there. So it was just easy document to just look at, colorful, appropriately colorful visual, good guide, I felt, and she felt too. So we utilized that. We talked quite a bit. We did video calls. So I mean, this was something that came up pretty quick. Um, are we partners? Like, because we kind of jumped right into the top bottom thing, even though it was more go. We went ahead and just it was Dom sub. We were just calling it top bottom, but they wanted to know about the relationship status. Like, are we also girlfriends? And like, I kind of, I already knew the route they were taking it, and like, I knew we needed to have the discussion, but I was just like, I think my exact wording was something like, I was like, so I mean, like, I mean, I guess we're girlfriends, like, right? Like, because it just didn't feel natural to me. It just, I guess I just wanted the Dom sub thing, but I felt, judging from them, that if I had told them that, it would not have been good. And I was in a place where I was just like, why don't I want that? Sure, that should be fine. Like, I want this to be sexual. Like, get to it. Like, and that was the other thing. It was like, we no penetration. We will get to sex. Like, we will get there, but you're not gonna rush me. Don't fucking rush me. But it will happen. Like, you just have to be patient with me until I'm comfortable enough to let you do it, and I know, to let you fuck me, that I know you're not here just to fuck me and dump me. Like, that's my biggest fear, is I was just gonna get fucked and dumped, or used up or whatever, like by people who don't give a fuck about me, like too much self-respect for that shit. Fuck that, no. Um, so that was my game plan, was like, let's do this, let's do bondage impact, let's explore our style, and we'll get to the sex. But also at this time I had started to become more in touch with my bondage needs. Part of that good friend that I mentioned, is a fairly experienced dominant as well. And so they do a really good job of asking me questions to make me, as a dominant does, asking me questions to force me to think and introspect about my feelings and stuff. And so when I would do a scene or something and be like, there was something missing, they would be like, what was missing? And I'd be like, fuck, and like have to force to verbalize it. And it's not like it's for them to hear, it's for me to hear. And doing some of that a few times has really kind of helped me, get in touch, but also just figuring out what was missing in scene, or what was not working, what I wanted more of. And what it really came down to is I wanted more bondage, I wanted more physical restraint, I want tight bondage, endurance bondage, predicament bondage. Now flogging, impact, it turns out I love abrasion play, sensory play, all that stuff is great, but honestly, like, that's really all I need. Like, you could do bare minimal to me as long as I'm like tightly bound and gagged and like blindfolded. Like, I'm good. Like, it's just like, it's like a meditation thing. It's like a massage thing. It's like a trauma coping thing. It's like a sexual thing too. It's like, because it's like if you're not getting your rocks off, then like, what the fuck are you really doing? Physical restraint and bondage meet a lot of my needs, that I go to kink for. And just realizing that and being open with it and accepting that, and trying to figure out what that's about and not worry so much about all the other stuff kind of became my focus, where I was just like, I need to explore what this bondage shit means to me. Because that was the other thing about, my brother dying, was so I did miss a little bit. So when I broke up with, the girlfriend, I had this intense emotional reaction where I just broke down and just cried so hard. And wasn't about the breakup so much. It was about the fact that I felt I was so close to getting like a dom sub thing going, and I was so close to getting tied up and all the things I wanted. And then it just, like, right as I'm grasping it, it all slipped through my fingers. And that's what I felt had kept happening to me over and over and over, is I would get so close, and then it would all just fall apart. And that's exactly what happened. And I had this intense emotional reaction over it, about like back to the drawing board feeling, about like back to step one, like all that building for nothing again, and like, oh, it was so worn down. Um, where was I going with this? It was so sad. But oh yeah, so it brought up this whole abandonment trauma thing that I've been like, wrestling with and in therapy with and talking about for a while now. But this idea that, part of my desire for BDSM comes down to need for rule structure and punishment and things, and the physical bondage is important for a variety of reasons, but like a lot of it comes down to having too much freedom, especially when I was young, and having a set, like a parent who gave rules and protocol and all that shit, and then they left my life at an early age, and the parent I was left with did not have any of that. And so I didn't have anybody to reel me in. And it wasn't just the parents thing, it was like the teachers too. Like, I was raised at an early age given this idea that the world had rules and that society had structure, and that, criminals got punished and we needed to do things. And the example I often use is like in the fourth grade, we were given these binders to keep up with for the entire year. And we would keep our papers in them, these little 3-room binders. Fucking papers like rip out of those. Those things are a mess. I hate them. I've always hated them, especially after this thing. But yeah, we were given them and we had them for the whole year. And I wasn't keeping up with mine. I was just shoving all the papers in my, folder and stuff. And just, or in my backpack, and just not looking at them. And over the year, it was building up, and all year I stressed out about it. I was like, when are the teachers going to find out? Like, how fucked am I going to be? Like, are they going to hold me back? Like, what's going to happen? I'm going to be in so much trouble. And I worried about that all year. And then when the teacher started going through my backpack, like, they were going through all the kids' backpacks, and they were cleaning them out. It was like the last day of school, and she gets to mine, and I'm just like white faced, like sitting there, just like moment of truth is upon me. And she starts pulling everything out, and she even, like, I feel like she even makes a face at all the messed up papers, and she just like puts them all away or something, and then like doesn't say a word to me, and that was it. I went on with my life. And that left a really big impression on me. It was this idea that not even the teachers are playing by the rules. Like, there are no rules. And when I got a little older and I made that crucial realization, that epiphany, that none of the adults are in charge and nobody knows anything and nobody knows what's going on. that threw my shit into more chaos. And that's part of the reason I got so interested in philosophy too. I was like, nobody knows what this is. Nobody knows what reality is. Nobody knows what life is. Nobody knows what the world is. We're all trying to figure it out, but most of us gave up thinking about it a long time ago. We're all just here. And so part of my interest in philosophy was like, I kind of want to know what this is. This is weird. Reality's strange. Consciousness is tricky. I don't understand it. Um, but yeah, I found out the world didn't have all that shit, and I grew up, and my brother grew up, and we didn't have any shit, and he was the one always getting in trouble and always getting away with shit, and fuck it, I mean, the drugs wasn't like a new thing. He had his ups and downs throughout the years, but like they were always kind of a factor. And me too. I had a struggle with opiates back during like the opiate crisis back in like 2008 and shit like that. Like I had my own struggle, and he introduced me. Like he was usually the one introducing me to bad shit. And I got to an age when I got like 17, 18 where I was more along for the ride, and he was kind of was not a great influence on me, but I was mostly my own person. We didn't roll together too much. Um, but yeah, what I eventually learned to discover was that my trouble in building relationships, a lot of the insecurity I was seeing when I first started dating 10 months ago was a lot of it was like abandonment stuff. Like with my first Dom, I felt several times that he had abandoned me. Like when he ghosted me after a scene for a few days, when I was sub dropping and he didn't fucking talk to me. Like, and even at the end when how he broke up with me via text, via somebody else, because he couldn't even man up and do it himself. Like, abandoned then. Like, and so I go into relationships with lots of abandonment trauma and insecurity, and it's hindering my relationship building process. So I decided at some point, coming to terms with a lot of this, that I need to get a handle on it because it's affecting the way I live my life. And looking back, it had been affecting the way I live my life for a long time. A long time. But that was something that occurred to me and I discovered. And right before my brother died, I was like, I told somebody I was close to, I was like, look, here is this basket of trauma and things that I figured out. I'm going to take it to my therapist. I'm going to give it to them. And I'm going to say, look at this. Like, we got all this to work on. Isn't this great? But then, like, it even occurred to me during that little excitement, I was like, oh, maybe my brother kind of suffers from this some stuff too. Because a lot of this goes back to when we were little and we grew up together and we went through the same shit. And then he died, and then so one of the things I did, I looked through his phone, the text with his girlfriend the night he died, because I nobody really knew anything, and like I wanted to piece together a little bit of picture, and I didn't know her either, at all. Like none of us had met her or anything when he died, and they'd been together for a few months, so she actually knew him better than any of us did up until that point, which I discovered. When I looked, because I had to know immediately, what was like the conversation leading up to his death. And he was drinking, but he was like positive and upbeat and had done the dishes and was like talking about how he was ready to get out of this funk he was in, and how he wasn't drinking because our dad was a bad drinker. And that was one of the reasons that I don't mess with our dad, is because, some of that shit of him disappearing on us when we were little, and some of these little events that he specifically mentioned that I know exactly what he's talking about. And he was just mentioning to his girlfriend, like he would tell her one day if they got closer and she was able to break his boundaries down more. Like he just made references to those things in the last hours of his life. 39-year-old man. And I saw that shit and it fucking blew me away. And he kind of talked and went on about mentioned me, and like, and he just kind of like drifted off, and like his time of death was marked at like 15 minutes after his last text. And the only narrative I can put together is that, he was in a state of mind thinking about it. He had had a little bit to drink. He had overdosed 5 days before this, and his girlfriend actually took him to the hospital. And like, so his body was probably worn down too. But he probably, took some of that heroin and took a little bit more than, he could handle, because he hadn't been doing it regularly. From what I could piece together, this was more of a relapsey thing. But he probably just wanted to do the move he taught me, actually. When I was 19, he taught me that if you ran out of opiates, to when you got more, to take the amount that you were used to taking, because it would hit you harder. He taught me to do that 15, 16 years ago. And I can only assume that's what he did that night. And it was just more than his body could handle. I don't think he did it on purpose. No, I don't think. Who does the dishes before they kill themselves? Like, I don't know. I just don't think so. But, everybody will think differently. But that's not what I think. But yeah, so I mean, that happened, and I felt like in some ways I showed up his doorstep with again, with a basket of like, hey, have you ever considered this about our childhood? And then it was already, because the other thing I learned, kind of looking through some of those texts, because so okay, I'm not a monster. I'll be full transparency here. I had to see the last night texting him his girlfriend, and then I scrolled back to when they first started dating, and read just enough, and until I respected her, to where I was not comfortable reading any more of their exchanges. And that was not long. Like, that woman was so good for him, and was always pushing back on his fucking bullshit, on his neediness, his clinginess. And that's one thing that I saw, was his neediness and his clinginess and his insecurity in the relationship. He was exactly how I was 15, 16 years ago. Is like, but it's like he never got past that shit. Like, I worked hard, and when I started dating, 10 months ago, I was noticing this shit in me, this insecurity. And even when I got in the relationship with the girl, I was like, my brain immediately went to this place of being weak, and just like not having my needs met, and just feeling sad about it. And I was like, I'm this person again, and I need reassurance, and I need all these things again. Why do I need all this shit? Why is it every time I get in a relationship, I become this small weak person, or I feel like shit because I'm never happy with what I'm getting into. Um, but I've worked through a lot of that shit. But what I saw looking at his stuff, the stuff that he was saying, and kind of like saying that, oh, he can only improve if he has this person's love. He can only improve if he has this person in the structure that they bring to his life. And then they're like, no, you need to show me that you can provide the structure, and that you can make, like, you need to be there with me. Like, I can't fix you, and it's like he wanted it backwards. He wanted the reward up front or something. But it was, looking at those texts, though, was like looking in a mirror of myself 15 years ago, and it was shocking. So in a lot of ways, I just came to understand my brother is like, we truly were cut from the same cloth. It was just, we dealt with our trauma in very, very different ways. One of us more self-destructive than the other. But something about the bondage, though, is, well, I mean, obviously it has to do with there's something like almost spiritual in it to me. That's a whole nother episode or discussion about what restraint means to me. But that became my focus, kind of going forward, was that I'm not looking for the sex stuff. I'm not looking for necessarily even the pain stuff so much. I just need the bondage. I just need tight bondage. And apparently that's a tall fucking ask, which is like not a tall ask for me. Like, if I'm topping somebody and they're like, tie me up, I'm like, how bad do you want it? Like, it's not a big deal for somebody to tell me that. So I just don't get why everybody I've talked to, like, the second they're like, whether it's rope. I mean, well, no, I know some rope people that do, you're like, tie me up, and they're like, okay, like, they're not a problem, but that's also kind of more of a work thing for me, in a lot of ways. Like, I do, I don't really have like intimate relationships with my rope guys or anything. I am bratty with them, though. I'm very bratty rope bottom, but I'm good too. But I decided I wanted to focus on exploring that. and figure out what it means to me and solve this riddle, this pilgrimage. I've been trying to get tied up my whole life, and I've best I've gotten is basically having somebody service top me and give them like a step-by-step note card on, I want this, and then you do this to this and attach this to this and make sure this is this tight and on this setting and on this. Those details are very important to me. It needs to be snug, tight, tight, tight. Like, that's how I like my bondage. Um, and like it's anytime I have to tell my top it's too loose or can you please tighten that, like I usually tell them, I say err on the side of tight and I'll let you know if I need it looser. um and all within safety. I am very receptive to my body, what my body's telling me. I'm not going to hurt my body, but I can take a lot of compression, I can take a lot of restraint. I need a lot of compression, I need a lot of restraint. um but Yeah, so I was like, let's do this. Let's focus on this. The trans girl didn't really know a lot about restraint, which is fine. I was willing to teach and help, and as somebody put it, carry it until they were ready to carry it. Um, the problem with that was, and they weren't wrong for wanting it, but they wanted more sex. They wanted the sexual elements of a submissive dom relationship. And I feel like I specifically heard them say something about like, well, if my submissive won't let me like fuck them like a toy, like do they really love me or something like that? I remember when I heard that, I was just like, this has got to be a joke, right? like but there are some people who are very much of the opinion of like, what good is a submissive that I can't fuck? Um, and like there ended up just being a lot of pressure for sex, and I had to push back on that a lot, and it wore me down after a while, and it was just too much. I couldn't take it. And eventually it became so much that it broke my trust. And once that trust was broken, I found that I could not submit to this person anymore, and I ended it. But it broke my heart. Like, it was so good. I had some good experiences. She put me in the corner for corner time as a punishment one time, a well-deserved punishment, as a matter of fact. I had been bratting all weekend to her, and I did something completely. I feel like I should tell the story, but I don't know. It's dumb and embarrassing. Maybe we can tell it a different time. But I got put in the corner. There's a picture. There's pictures of it. And I just rapturous tears floating from my face. Like, a lot of people see that picture and it's my back, but you don't realize like I'm like weeping during it, because it was so perfect. It was this because again, coming back to punishment and me and the as a child not being punished for not doing my homework or that year-long assignment. I was never punished, and I was never punished for a lot, and neither was my brother. And so the idea of being punished, and having been held accountable for something I've done wrong, that I knew was wrong and I did it anyway, this thing wasn't intentional. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this to be a little shit. I just did it, and it was rude and dumb, and I did it and was like, oh, that was kind of disrespectful. And they looked at me and was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, didn't really think much of it until they came up and grabbed me by the back of the neck. And I don't know if you've ever had another adult grab you by the back of the neck and walk you over somewhere quickly and put you down on your knees while you're completely naked and just fucking put you against a wall, and that's it. And you have to stay there on your knees. It's quite an experience, and we were both laughing about it too and shit. Like, it was funny as fuck, and that's how the tears kind of got started. I was laughing so hard about it, but I was trying to stop because I was like, "This is serious. This is serious." But we were both laughing about it. But it was also like, it was a serious moment. Um, but when it got quiet and like the reality of it started to set in on, and how good it was, of like the swift punishment being delivered, and then like like, and that being it, and that being the closing of the book. I did wrong, I was punished, that's it, over. I found what I needed, I found one of my needs, like, and that was like, those rapturous tears and everything. That was like a true sign to me that I had found one of the pieces that I was looking for. And I gave all that up, and I broke up with her. And like, I gave more than that up too. There was also some really lovely experiences. Um, that I had, and I tried to really remind them of that when I ended it. I was like, there was a lot of good in this, there really was. We're just a mismatch, just incompatible, and it became also this issue of me thinking about, well, how do I want to get fucked if I'm a sub in a relationship? Because it was also this thing of like, they wanted sex, I wasn't ready for it, but the second I said I was ready, they would fuck me. So in a lot of ways, I held the power, but I wanted to be the submissive. And so I was like, if I have all this power, I'm just going to be holding on this power, and it's going to make me uncomfortable until I give it up. But then it's like, I don't know. And so this begged this question of, well, how would I want to lose it? And so I wrote a short story called Thirst that I feel perfectly conveys how I would want to get fucked for the first time in a dom sub relationship. Um, mhm. If you would like to read it, it's available on two of my platforms. If you cannot find it, you can always send me a message or reach out to me, or I don't know, maybe I'll leave a comment or something, and I'll post a link to it or something in the comments. But it's a short narrative, short, clean, to the point, about a girl who meets a dom who understands. She's obviously me, but understands that what I just said about the more he wants it, the more power I have, and the less he has. So having understood that, he takes an approach with me that works. And the big reveal at I think the ending is great. And I've had other people tell me the ending is just great. But so check that out if you want to know what my path is to that. But so that was a very good practice for me. So for all that did not work out, there were still things that are working out. And I'm getting there, and I'm learning myself as I go. And so, I mentioned at the beginning of this, I'd done half a year and felt like I'd gotten no closer to getting anything that I was wanting. But that is not true. Like, I really have had a lot of experiences that have taught me a lot about what I'm looking for, where my boundaries are, where I'm, and like, I have a fuck ton of boundaries. I call myself boundary queen. Mostly because everybody wants to fuck me, because I'm the hot trans chick or whatever. I'm not gonna say really, oh, I'm the hot trans chick, but I'm mildly attractive. It's like, do what I do, make money. People obviously, there's some interest, you know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, I was just like, I don't know, just shit's fucking. It's just like my trigger, and like somebody told me, they were like, I haven't known you very long, but I've known, the one thing I do know about you is that sex is your biggest trigger, and I was like, how very apt of you. And I love sex. Sex is great. I'm just demisexual, and that's something that coming to terms with that word and what it means for me is something that was kind of another one of those steps about 3 weeks a month ago, where I was like, I'm fairly certain that most of the sex I want is either emotional connection style, because I could see having sex with like a vanilla partner, in a polyamorous situation where I have like the idea of having like a boyfriend or something, that like we don't really do a lot of kink shit. We just like go on dates and like fuck and make out, and maybe he sucks my toes. Like, that is an incredibly like attractive idea to me. But of course I couldn't just have that. Of course I would need a dom and maybe a sub, and maybe also like, I don't know, maybe a second dom. I don't know. Maybe just like a dedicated rigger who just ties me up and leaves me for an hour here and there. Um, takes a picture here and there. Maybe all that would be happy, but I only want to have sex within certain confines of certain situations. Like, generally vanilla sex is something that I'm just like, I don't want to do. It's not meeting my needs. It's not what I'm on this planet for. It's not what I want. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. And just being like open and cool about that has been a game changer for me, I think. Like, it's made a lot of people kind of back off and, realize that I'm not just an easy fuck, and that they're not going to be able to do a couple of flogging scenes with me, and then I'm going to want to blow them. Because that's what one guy thought, I think. Pretty sure that's what he thought. So when that fell apart, I I did not quite have a huge emotional devastating reaction. I felt fairly satisfied in some of the experiences I had, and that I felt having that rapturous experience during corner time, I was on the right path. And so I felt very empowered, and I felt that I had a better handle on what I was looking for. So I put out an ad for a non-sexual bondage top. I was like, I just need a partner who enjoys tying, who enjoys having a bound body in front of them. Um, Maybe they consider an attractive bound body, sure. So they get to enjoy that. I might be down for some touching, and I get to enjoy this. So I kind of put out an ad looking for more of a partner along that style, along that thing of like no penetration, none, none at all. But we can do this thing, and like who knows, maybe it'll develop into something. But I'm not even really talking about that. So. But this is what I want. This is what I need. Who else has a similar need? This is sort of thing I came out with. I met a sadist, um, which is an experienced sadist, which I feel is an important distinction. And there is a lot I can learn from this person. And I've done a few scenes with them, and there's pictures like I got put through my paces. Homegirl earned her stripes. I got a big old bruise right here, right now. But that's been my most recent thing. We did a little bit of bondage. It was pretty good. Not bad. Could have been stricter. Could have been better. But we will work on that. Lots of pain play, lots of impact, abrasion play. I'm learning a lot, and it's like taking the pain tour. I very much enjoy the being tortured. I think what's missing for me is a little bit of that dom sub energy. Like my previous partner had a lot of style that I was receptive to, but not a lot of experience or competency. This person has a lot of experience and competency, but I'm not finding a lot of style that I mesh with very much. And so it's a little dry. It seems a little textbook so far. But I'm going to work and figure out exactly how to verbalize what it is missing. um, I don't know. It's just still early, but it is good in the way that nobody's trying to fuck me. They're not trying to talk me into fucking them, and I don't have to be their girlfriend for them to tie me up, and that is really cool. That's a nice thing, because it's not what I'm used to. So yeah. But even just being open about that, even like my foot shit, like I had somebody suck on my toes not too long ago, and it was great. It was the best thing ever, way better than I thought it was gonna be. It was great. But even just like being upfront with like, if my partner won't touch my feet or go near my feet, I used to joke and say, well, that's not big enough for it to be a deal breaker. I think it is at this point. Like, if I enjoy it that much, and it's like, my need for bondage and my foot fetish are probably the two things that I've been most like closeted and kind of like guilty-ish about for the longest time. And I'm now finally at a point where I'm just so open about making reference to them, or casually, or I take more feet pictures, or whatever, like, I have less of an issue posting those, because I'm like, I know people enjoy it, and it's what I enjoy, and it's okay. It's okay to enjoy what I enjoy, and I enjoy people paying attention to my feet. It's great. So I'd let them. But yeah, just being open about like, I need this and this, and that's yeah, that's huge for me, because 6 months ago I was not in this position. I could not say that shit, or if I could, I couldn't say it like openly or honestly. But now it's like way different. And yeah, so playing with the sadist has inspired me my top side again, and now I kind of want to top some people. And part of me wanting to top again has come back to this. I want to experience my style again to better identify what kind of style I'm looking for, because that person who questioned me pretty good did ask me like, so what is the style that you're missing? And I'm trying to verbalize it, and I can a little bit, but it's kind of hard. And so I think in some ways it might be better for me to demonstrate it to myself, and do so in a way where I'm not like taking advantage of submissive or anything. I'm not trying to like, you know, take on a sub or anything, but like a bottom who wants to do some casual play where we can negotiate a scene where they get to try some things, I get to try some things, and we both have a good time. Like, sure, that's what it's all about. Let's do that. I'm thinking about doing that to kind of flex my D muscle again, because it's been a while too. It has been since December or January was the last time I was in Dom mode, so it's like 6 months. So that might be interesting, and it might be a good chance for me to step away from submission again, just because I, again and again, I keep getting my heart broken, and I am getting closer, but I'm not there yet. But yeah, I think that's about it. That's about my journey up to this point. I don't want to sit here and go. This is already a long fucking video. I don't want to sit here and like go on all night about it. Thank you for watching all the way to the end here. Thank you for continuing to support me, Lindsay19, and check out all my shit. All my links are in the comments or bio or something. I don't know. Okay. Homegirl out. Bye. Y'all have fun.